fighting under the cover of darkness, their flashlight lighting their path, the Migrants Moon, where the numbers of migrants are slightly going up now.
The vast majority of people we catch are no different than us. Yes, we will have some that have been identified as criminals that do have criminal histories, but those states that we primarily see are Guanajuato, Guerrero, and then Hidalgo.
A park on the banks of the Rio Grande. Once the image of the immigration crisis, was it abandoned by the state of Texas? And a judge puts a stop to a new targeted effort along 7 Texas and California counties, where it is said that the cartels launder money $200 at a time. How feasible is that when the cartels make billions in drug and human trafficking? I'm Yami Virgin with Sinclair Broadcasting with another edition of Immigration Crisis, the fight for the southern border. We have taken you before to Terrell County, Texas, about 2 hours from Del Rio. There, Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland spoke to us again this week about what he is now seeing. All right, Sheriff, what has been going on since all the changes? We've done all the stories on the numbers going down, but I think as expected, you're starting to see a shift, right?
That's right. So like the rest of the border, our apprehensions have dropped significantly, and we haven't seen a whole lot of activity. The last 2 months have been pretty slow. We're typically and historically, this is our busy time of year. However, starting up here in April, we've already jumped up to 60 apprehensions. We've got about 11 gotaways and about 18 more that are outstanding in the field that are still workable groups. So with that being said, we anticipate with the moon, it's perfect right now to give more light at nighttime for the groups to cross. So we're anticipating things to get even busier.
The people in the pictures that you sent, where are they from? And did they tell you why they went through your area?
Right. So all are from all but one. There was one female in the group, and she was from Cuba, of all places. All the rest were from Mexico, and that's what we typically see out here. Having a females, not that it's odd. We typically don't see a lot of females. We will see some, but having one from another country, that's a little different for us. As you know, we still catch people primarily from the country of Mexico, primarily Mexican men. There was also 4 juveniles in the group, all from Mexico. But traveling with family members. I think 2 of them were actually going to be considered a family group, meaning they were with a parent or a brother.
Okay, why is it that we're still talking about the need for technology? You still don't have an aerostat, right?
Right, we don't. We had one that was deployed here. And actually the time it was deployed here, it was in an area where it wasn't real beneficial. There were some decisions made to put it there. However, where it was located would be perfect right now, because we've seen our traffic shift to where it's a little closer to the town of Sanderson, but they're not coming into Sanderson, they're going further west. So and the main reason to answer your question is just because Big Bend, there's not a lot of infrastructure south of us in Mexico to facilitate a large flow, nor is there a lot of infrastructure north of us to get them out of the area. However, what we saw during the last 4 years is that we can definitely absorb more activity out here in Terrell County. As you know, that number of 417% increase in apprehensions we had in 2022 when compared to fiscal year 2020, that was significant. We went from about 1,000 apprehensions a year to 7,400 apprehensions, just over 8,000 gotaways, and then that number of the unknown, how many people crossed that we just had no situational awareness of. So, again, as we see more infrastructure and technology deployed to other locations, I foresee more activity coming this way. However, I will foresee Border Patrol also investing in more technology into the Big Bend region.
And I've asked you this before. What keeps you up at night?
Man, it may change a little bit, because even like today, we went out there and apprehended 20 out of maybe 30 is what we've been told based on some interviews of the illegals. And then last week we had a group of 10 that were apprehended, and there was about another 10 that got away. So to be honest with you, in this location where we made the apprehension today and where the apprehension was made last week of those large groups, the group scattered. So people ran, and they're still about 10 miles south of town. I worry about them. And the reason I worry about them is because we're getting hot. They're not going to know where they're at. They're going to have little supplies, and you're really just wandering. Our last death of an illegal alien that we found about a month and a half ago, he laid there and died in an abandoned camper, like a hunting cabin. And there was a plate beside him that had some berries and some fruit. I mean, not fruit, but had some twigs from a cedar bush. I mean, he was eating whatever he could find. That, to be honest, is what worries me is groups that are going to end up being lost, and it's going to turn into a recovery of someone that's died.
Are they telling you that the price that they're being charged has gone up? Because, I mean, the coyotes are still helping them to at least get them on the right path. So are they having to pay more now?
I haven't noticed that. So for out here, it's still about 8 to 12,000 for people from Mexico, is what we've been told through our interviews that we had, and even today, there were some around 9 and 10,000. So we haven't seen those go up, but that's a very good point. As the border becomes more hard to cross in different locations, and as this area becomes more viable, I likely will see an increase in prices for people being smuggled.
Anything else that's surprising right now?
Really, I didn't anticipate, President Trump affecting activity like he did. And I think that's been the number one thing, has been his voice. And I said it in many interviews, having a strong president in the White House that lets the rest of the world know you're not going to come here has made a big difference. President Trump's done his part. Now it's time for Congress to do their part. The only way we're going to get more infrastructure, more technology, more of those tethered balloons that have radars and cameras is going to be by Congress getting together, getting their act together, coming together on a bipartisan bill that adds more funds to the border so we can secure it.
Thank you, Sheriff Cleveland. We now go east of Terrell County to Maverick County, down Highway 90, to be exact, Shelby Park, which at one point in time was the epicenter of the immigration crisis. It had been taken over by the state of Texas after the city of Eagle Pass signed an agreement with the state so they could set up operations there to stop migrants from crossing. Now, as our colleague Jordan Elder explains, no one is quite sure if the park was abandoned by the state of Texas or if they are simply scaling back their presence.
No concrete barriers, no guards, no armored vehicles. For the first time in more than a year, Eagle Pass residents can freely come in these gates to Shelby Park. This has been the scene since January of 2024, when the state of Texas locked down this 2-mile section of borderland. When crossings started dropping, Governor Abbott set this as the guideline for when the park would reopen.
I believe if we have a president in place who's going to enforce the laws that deny illegal entry into the United States of America, that will be a time when the residents of Eagle Pass will be able to get their park back.
And according to residents, Sunday was that day.
We had to come see for ourselves, so we did. It was quite a loss when we couldn't use this park anymore because they closed it off to the public.
In a statement, the governor's office says, quote, illegal crossings in Eagle Pass are at a record low. As a result, there's no longer a need for Texas to maintain northern-facing barriers, though the state will maintain barriers and a presence on the border itself.
We still do not have full control of the park as a community. All of the things that were scattered around the park are now concentrated.
Just within the fence.
Just within the fence.
America Garcia Graywall holds vigils at the park each month honoring migrants who died on the journey to the U.S. She and her father discovered the parking lots, the baseball and softball fields, and some of the soccer fields are accessible now.
These guys got in here yesterday and I guess earlier today and cut all the weeds out and look, you could play ball here.
Garcia says it appears the city is fronting that cost. The mayor of Eagle Pass tells me there was no big announcement about the reopening, saying he's still waiting to hear from the state about what the parameters are and if the city will be reimbursed for the state's time here.
The city of Eagle Pass had over $2 million in losses from the governor taking over Shelby Park. So it's obviously important to us. Those are Texas taxpayers' dollars.
State Representative Eddie Morales says his biggest concern is, will the state close the gates again? Even with the unanswered questions, residents say this is a win for now.
Thank you, Jordan. And now the federal government's also trying to stop the smuggling of the cartel's profits from the U.S. back to Mexico. But a new policy set out by FinCEN is part of the new southern border geographic targeting, which will affect anyone who wants to exchange or send more than $200 to Mexico through small money businesses known as casas de cambio. But surprisingly, the banks don't have to follow the same rules. To the average person, it looks like business as usual here in Laredo and in Eagle Pass, in small money businesses or casas de cambio.
Gracias.
But behind this counter, new federal rules are causing workers
From $250 to $300. That's our average transaction.
and owners to worry about their future. On April 14th, the money services businesses in 7 Texas and California counties must report cash transactions as low as $200 instead of $1,000 and up. This is part of a new southern border geographic targeting order. That order comes from the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to crack down on alleged drug cartel money being laundered. In California, the 2 counties are Imperial and San Diego. And in Texas, the 5 counties are El Paso, Cameron, Hidalgo, Webb County, which includes Laredo, and Maverick County, including Eagle Pass.
Our average transaction is from $250 to $300. That's our average transaction.
The people from the cartels are not coming here to launder money. It's impossible to do that. There's no way they can.
Mostly working people?
No, working people, the people that work in the garden, like housekeepers, carpenters, the guy from the cement, all the people that comes and work here and go back the next day.
These new rules are meant to disrupt how cartels move their profits. But for the owners of the exchange houses or casas de cambio, they are over-regulated compared to banks, who are not included in this new order.
You can go 2 blocks and you can walk from here and then go and exchange to a bank, and they won't ask you for the requirements that we are asking you.
So they don't have to ask for social, no ID, nothing?
No, nothing. They're not on the new order.
A lawsuit was filed against the federal government this week by the Texas Association for Money Services and Businesses.
You've got thousands and thousands of people coming across daily. Our largest trading partner is Mexico. If you just go to the Bridge of Columbia and see all of the 18-wheeler choferes, the drivers, if you will, of those 18-wheelers that oftentimes will cash their U.S. checks at these casas de cambio for their American counterparts. You're talking about industry that is wholly going to be affected, not just those businesses, but the consumers along the border, the residences along the border, those counties and those cities are absolutely going to hurt by this action.
But critics say the targeting of these communities may be creating unintended consequences, especially in low-income, largely Latino communities where casas de cambios are a lifeline for many, including the elderly and the unbankable, who cannot afford non-sufficient funds and charges from banks.
As a small business owner, being in business for over 38 years now, it is imperative that we need to continue to allow this freedom to our constituents, to allow them to use cash freely without having all these reporting requirements for anything that is exchanged or transferred over $200. It seems short-sighted.
State Representative Eddie Morales represents Maverick County and says this will affect many in his district.
Our community is a small community on the border. You know, our community is a little bit more old school still in the sense of, hey, cash is king, and if you have it in your pocket, that really resonates a lot more than having it in a bank or some crypto exchange, account or any other format. And for that matter, I do think that we need to be careful in some of this federal legislation that is imposed upon our residents and our constituents, because we do run on cash. I think it may have a negative impact. I haven't heard that many Casa de Cambios or the exchange locations complain yet.
The new rules include providing ID, social security number, currency transaction reports for these businesses for $200 to $10,000. The owners say this will create more paperwork. For example, Martinez tells us his Laredo Casa de Cambio will possibly go from 1,000 reports a month to 75,000. And that is if people don't just go across the street to banks to exchange their money.
I don't think people are gonna want to give us their private information now with all the hacking and everything. They're afraid to give us their social security, passports, any legal documents, and they're probably just gonna go to a bank or go across into Mexico and do their business over there.
For U.S. citizens who live in Mexico because of its affordability and Mexican citizens who legally come shopping on the U.S. side, this may prove to be another headache they can avoid by spending money in another area of the U.S.-Mexico border. That's all for this week in another edition of Immigration Crisis, the fight for the southern border. For Sinclair Broadcasting, I'm Yami Virgin in San Antonio, Texas, where we continue being the eyes and ears of the southern border. Until next time.